Good morning, all. I'm Liz Spear, and I was fortunate enough to spend most of this week with the Handweavers Guild of Boulder, having a very, very fine sewing workshop over at Studio Bernina, who were very gracious hosts. I was allowed to stay with Kathy Bickle, who took great care of me, introduced me to all of the animals first. It was a great week. Every sewing group, workshop group is different. And I gotta say, you Boulder ladies had great questions, and you just kept working, kept at it, asked direct questions, listened, and then kept at it. It was a great week from my side as well. I heard wonderful things. Hopefully everybody learned a lot. At least they said they did. And they're going to keep going. And that's what teaching is about, is inspiring and hoping that what we say and do continues. So let me show you a conglomeration of pictures that I chose to illustrate the topic, runway fashion from the maker's hands. This is a series of fashion shows with which I was involved in a variety of ways. Okay, here's my intro by confession. I have a many years Vogue subscription, and I adore a full-on fashion show in spite of living in jeans and t-shirts and flannel shirts year-round at age 66. I just love them. I don't model. I turn stiff as a board when I'm on stage myself, but I'm not afraid of a microphone, and I can produce a fashion show. Informal. For 20 years, I produced the Fiber Day fashion show of wearable art for the Southern Highlands Craft Guild based in Asheville, North Carolina, of which I'm a member, showing the work of the members in fiber in the best possible venue for wearables. There were marketing efforts for all of the other media involved in the Southern Highlands Craft Guild, and there was teaching and demoing going on, but there really wasn't a marketing effort specifically aimed at wearables. The organization had done a few fashion shows previously, but they didn't really continue. So I don't do committee work, okay? Not a real great guild member, but oh, can I produce if I pronounce myself queen and I have helpers. So this young man in the picture is a third generation broom maker. His mother is involved with the guild as the impromptu photographer, and his father is a second generation broom maker in the area. And so young Corbin, I don't know why, but he offered to model for me, which he did in 9th, 10th, and 11th grades. And he could work it. And he was so incredibly personable. One year, I featured the work of Laura Sims, a master marbler who passed away in 2014. But she was a long time, very heavily involved member of the Southern Highlands Guild. And so I had 3 sets, cummerbund and tie, that she had marbled in silk. So this was one of Corbin's outfits during the show. And there I am. It doesn't start with getting to pull and fondle and put together outfits. It started 5 months before, when I sent out the invitational letter asking for folks to either make a special outfit or make sure they had plenty of work at the Folk Art Center for the shop. But for 3.5 days, I would put together outfits, assign models, establish the show order. And towards the end, about 15 years in, I averaged about 50 participants work, 90 outfits, 8 to 10 models, a backstage manager, and some dedicated dressers. It was great, totally exhausting. You think a workshop is exhausting. Oh my goodness, putting together a fashion show. So this is the morning of the show. We have built a, this is the backstage area. The models are checking out their outfits. They each generally have had 8 to 10 outfits. They each have half of garment rack, part of a table. Yeah. And the dress rehearsal is the morning of the shows, because this large auditorium type room is fully occupied the day before with demos. It's Fiber Day, large special event. So after the special event is cleared away, then my friend Neil would come in, build the wall with pro panels, hang them with some raw silk, and pull out all of the chairs and establish and build a stage. This was a very, very informal fashion show. The whole premise of this show, of this event, was educational. So after I spent those 3.5 days pulling outfits, putting things together, I'd spend 2 days writing the commentary and stuffing as much educational stuff as I possibly could into my commentary. I was talking about how folks made stuff, talking about the processes, talking about each specific person's story, directly marketing, talking about the processes. So this woman is actually also a member of the Guild. This was the last year of the show, and she had such a good time modeling for us. That's a combination seamless and cut and sew felt jacket there on the left, made by Joan Berner. And on the right, it's a long linen duster that was sort of repurposed with the addition of some boro. Made Joanna very happy. And this was the very tail end of my organizing at home before I took off for the Folk Art Center on Sunday morning. I would put together, this is the full map of the show. I'm sorry it's fuzzy, but each model is listed in order with their own color, Sharpie. The outfits are numbered. The models have their own numbered outfits. The boxes around a group of models means they come out at the same time because they're wearing outfits by the same person. So I would present, for instance, 3 outfits by Vicki Vipperman, and they would come out on stage, and I would talk about each one briefly. And at that point, the first person in line would go out the little runway walk amongst the audience. I wanted to keep this informal so that the models and the audience were on the same level, so that the audience could get close to the work and see the incredible detail and texture, and also the models who were so happy. And there I am, standing in front of the small stage. It was 8 by 16, I believe. Covered with just a chunk of carpet, and 2 small chunks of carpet went out at angles, so we had 2 runways. But there I am with my podium. I insisted they drape with more raw silk, going through my commentary, talking about as much as I could of materials, techniques, history of the wearables, and each individual participant. This is Tamala. She is also a member. She modeled for me a number of years, but these are the kinds of outfits I would put together. Quite simple. The simplest ones, of course, only had one piece, like the nuno-felt dress on the right. Tamala, bless her heart, tall, slender, gracious, willing to dress skin out, undress, redress as fast as she possibly could. So she got a higher number, of the dresses. The outfit in the middle is a naturally dyed raw silk dress and sash. And on the left is a handwoven shawl with a probably a marbled scarf. And this is Tamala's daughter, who modeled for us for about 4 years with Tamala. And she absolutely insisted, oh, I didn't tell you, this fashion show for the last 15 years took place on Mother's Day. So I had yet another hook I could work. So here was this mother-daughter team. I also acquired another mother-daughter team along the way. And Dana Claire. Dana Claire, as you see on the left, really didn't like being on stage. But for me, she was willing to do whatever I needed her to do. And that year, I needed another model. A handwoven jacket with a sun-printed scarf in silk. In the middle, she's got a pair of felted accessories we put together to make an outfit. And finally, I believe it was a classmate of hers at Haywood Community College in the production crafts program, wove that orange striped top. I always invited the Haywood students. The group as a whole was an educational member of the Southern Highlands Guild. So it being my personal alma mater and the reason I moved to North Carolina, I always invited the students. And it fluctuated every single year with different groups of people. Some of the stuff was absolutely stunning. This is Donna, and another story. Donna was a city manager from South Carolina. And along about 2001 or 2, she came up to me after the show, introduced herself and said, I have just had the best Mother's Day of my entire life. Her son and husband had dropped her off at the Folk Arts Center and gone off to do other stuff. And then she said, so could I model for you? And she did the whole rest of the time. She's 5'10", she's got broad shoulders, she's brassy, she's a little stiff, but she had such a wonderful time. It pretty much didn't matter. She was kind of a crowd favorite. Because you see that smile? That meant she also got to wear the outfit made of birdseed bags and the one made out of coffee bean gunny sacks a few years before. And one year, the students made an entire outfit made out of black and yellow caution tape, including the kilt. Absolutely killer. The audience loved it. Donna maintained, and she kept coming back for more. 3 more guild members just rocking it. Look at those smiles. Naturally dyed and assembled jacket on my friend Neil on the left, Patty in the middle. I don't even remember that outfit at all. And Cherry on the right is wearing another nuno-felt dress and a beaded necklace. In the Southern Highlands Guild, bead weaving, generally jewelry, comes under the heading of fiber. And that's who was invited to participate in these fashion shows, were the fiber members of the Southern Highlands Guild. So we had jewelry. Double woven shawl by Dana Claire earlier on. And Dana, when she was at Haywood, developed a process whereby she would design her double weave blocks by using the dots and dashes of Morse code, which was something she saw in stonework when she was working at a college in California. So I don't remember exactly what this shawl says, but it is loving and supportive. Couple of my coats on the left on Patty and Tamala with my nuno-felt and black fabrics. And there's Donna showing a suite of incredibly felted jewelry by Lisa Klakulik. More smiles. This is a pair of pieces from from Catherine Ellis, who collaborated with a young seamstress in Asheville for another fashion show. She designed and produced these two pieces, combining Catherine's woven shibori fabrics with some silk dupioni. Absolutely killer. And of course, after the show, oh boy, everybody rushed forward and we checking in with our peeps. The two ladies with me on the right, the one right behind me was a longtime customer. She came every single year. The lady on the right was a potential customer. Everybody loved this show. I had to give it up. It was just time. But it was a great experience. And again, this was an informal, very comfortable show. The next series of images I want to show you are from 3 much more formal, but still educational and community building fashion shows produced by Local Cloth Incorporated of Asheville. They did a show in 12, in 14, and in 16, and they were in a different venue each time. This image is from the first one. They did a raised stage in the Central Hall of the Asheville Museum of Art. Very interesting. Instead of a live commentary, they produced a full color program with each outfit pictured and a commentary written by the artist. Different way to do it. So Vicki Bennett was a felter, teacher, dyer, knitter, spinner. You know, we're all multi-fiber people, right? So she was living in Fairview, North Carolina at the time and involved with the committee producing these fashion shows. And she asked me for the second one if I'd be interested in collaborating in a couple of outfits. She wanted to do a suite of 4 outfits for the seasons of the year. I said, oh, you betcha. So after a couple of meetings to discuss who was going to do what and just sort of an overall feel for 2 of the outfits, I did fall and winter. I made this long burgundy dress in my handwoven fabric. There's a slit up the back, up to about the knee for walking ease. It's just very simple tank top type wide straps. And Vicki had made this shawl collar in nuno-felt with just a little bit of a gold ruffle around the outer edge. And I sewed, doesn't matter. I attached snaps to this. So it would actually snap into the neckline of this dress. I also made this long coat in my rag fabric with 3/4 sleeves because part of Vicki's part of this outfit was gauntlets in felt. But I had great fun using some other pieces of the felt to just cut out some oak leaves and applique them. What's on my ironing board there are some twisted long strands that I also kind of stitched here and there in spirals, because who doesn't love a spiral? Yeah. But combined with Vicki's headdress and those gauntlets became this outfit on the right. I hope you guys can see it. It was absolutely stunning. This young woman was a great model. She was a dancer. Great fun. This is the other outfit I worked on. This is for winter. And Vicki gave me a chunk of her nuno-felt in these grays with overtones of purples and lavender. And she had a vest. I'm sure it's very, very common. I don't remember the name of it, but it was a one-piece vest. And you just cut out the armholes and then sew the shoulder seams together and you had a vest. So when I cut out that top upper part, I had these beautiful pieces with Vicki's deckled edge, which became the cap sleeves. Another part of it became a band collar applied to this. I wasn't satisfied with the drape of the wool on this dress form, so I took some darts and made it much better. And there's the outfit. And thank goodness Vicki had this incredibly cute neighbor. This gal is 16 and had a really good time. And luckily she was tiny, because the purple wool gaucho pants from folkwear pattern I made had a 22-inch waist. That's all the fabric I had. And she could rock it. So this fashion show in 14 took place at the Diana Wortham Theater, which was an entirely different feel, classy little place. All right, I forgot. These are the other two outfits for Vicky's season suite. And this is a mother-daughter team. Molly Hamilton on the right, wearing the longish green dress, is the woman who bought Folkwear Patterns. She's based in Fairview, North Carolina. They bring out new patterns every month. And there's a great blog. Cool, look it up, folkwear.com. And I believe, I don't know where this daughter came in the lineup, but isn't that gorgeous? So Molly's long sundress was made of tropic weight wool challis, eco-printed by Vicki Bennett, turned over to the sewing partner, who had found this very beautiful dress pattern and made it. And then Vicki also did this shawl that picked up some of the more, you know how you have like dried stuff left over in the summer, or in the spring. So it was a beautiful outfit. And there's spring. The dress had ice-dyed ruffles, beaded embroidery on the bodice pleats, and Vicki made the nuno-felt hat for this incredibly beautiful little child. They came out on stage together. And Asheville noticed that we had this show. And actually, this blue outfit, Kathy, that was done by Kathy Hayes. She was an invited artist that year. So, the third fashion show that Local Cloth produced was actually at the Folk Art Center, the same auditorium where I had produced mine for 20 years. However, they pulled down the stadium seating, and again, it was a much more formal fashion show. They did a raised runway. They pulled down the humongous screen behind the models, and that's where they flashed up pictures of the participants and the title of the outfit. So this piece began with some very, very beautiful scraps, weaving samples from one friend, augmented by some scraps from my friend Neil Howard, and I made this long trio vest, which is a pattern which fits lots and lots of different bodies. And this young gal, this was so incredibly happy to be modeling under the lights on a stage. The smile just never quit. And she did a beautiful job. This jacket started as a Catherine Ellis tablecloth. She wove it for her home. She used it for 20 years. And that year of 16, she brought me a pile of fabrics just to see if there were some things that I could make for this fashion show, for the fashion show at Convergence the same year. I think it was those two in particular. I just happened to have some navy fabric that looked pretty darn good with Catherine's old tablecloth and made this jacket. This is some more of Catherine's fabrics. Some of her samples for a project of that year, 15-16, when she was cross weaving. So there is wool and cotton in both warp and weft, which of course take the natural any dyes differently. So the dyed samples were dyed first in rhubarb and thin black walnut. Then the woven shibori threads, gathering threads, were pulled up, overdyed in indigo. And I made this coat. And it got rocked up and down that runway. This coat, one of mine, using fabrics from my stash and Neil's, the Neil scrap stash. But this center image is how it started for me. And this is the first one of this particular style that I made. So just playing with all of these scraps from the Neil Howard garments that I sew for her, which means I have all the scraps, just on the big cutting table, just sorting, playing, auditioning. You quilters know that term. Actually, weavers do too. So the coat on the left is how it looked on the dressmaker's mannequin, but on the right, seeing your work on a moving body makes such a difference in the confidence that you have to keep going. All right. So another whole set of fashion shows happen at our regional conferences. In 15, I was up in St. Paul participating in the Midwest Weaving Conference, teaching my sewing workshop. They also asked me to judge their fashion show, and I ended up also emceeing. So this is when I walked into the room, the organizing room, and the guild member from Minneapolis, who was in charge of fashion show that year, had everything completely organized and sorted. It's amazing. Just a couple of pieces that caught my eye. The piece on the left, this coat, I've seen it done several times in other fabrics, hand woven and commercial. And this piece, it was just so exquisite. Completely simple, 16 harness, plated twill, pardon me. Yummy. And the one on the right, we're talking mixed cotton plain weave with an applied collar of hand dyed cotton fabrics. And it was very well done. Two more jackets, just the contrast here blew my mind. So the piece on the right was from Lou French. It was very understated. It was beautiful, brilliant reds in what I have since been seen called mosaic weave. I believe it's a type of deflected double weave, but instead, well, anyway. And the one on the left, this is the first time that I met Marcy Komarchik from Wisconsin. And those red lines were actually the tip of pleats that she had woven in. Amazing. The beads had been woven in. And then she did this jacket just using the pleating capability of that black fabric. It was just amazing. So another Midwest Weavers Conference 2 years later in Indianapolis, I had done this outfit for another show. I'm a full-time craftsman, so I don't get to stop and do special runway stuff very often. But every once in a while, particularly when they're clustered, and I can take a piece from an exhibition into a fashion show and maybe into another exhibition, then I can rationalize this. So this outfit was originally a collaborative piece done with a metal worker. I don't remember the thought process that got me here, but I started thinking chainmail. And I remembered that my friend David Alberts had this side interest in chainmail most of his life. Also a member of the Southern Highlands Guild, and he had actually done a chainmail bikini for one of the members' exhibitions previously. So I called and asked if he would be interested in doing an outfit. And again, went over to his place a couple of times and we talked about it, and oh my goodness. So this outfit consists of a long black dress, sleeveless, with, as you see in the picture on the right, just a triangular inset of chainmail sewn into the front neckline of the dress. The other piece is a separate piece, the collar, which is sewn to, I don't know, a collar that sits flat on the shoulders, to which is attached the swallow-tailed chainmail that came across the shoulders and along the front and ended in those pointy bits that kind of echo the collar above it. Pretty amazing. I guess I call this the swallowtail capelet or something. I don't remember. And there's David working away. David spent his 30-year career on the NASCAR circuit as a fabricator. So he would make parts for these racing cars, and his specialty was aerodynamics. But he adored chainmail, and he knew all the history of the various European styles and how long they lasted and why they used different metals. And so when he retired from his NASCAR career, he happened on a jewelry workshop, fell in love with the field, fell in love with the teacher, and they're still together. So it was his idea to do this medallion that I sewed onto the back of that collar. It's titanium and copper. I wanted copper for the color. He suggested titanium for the weight, meaning less weight. So also for Midwest Weavers in 17, I had this chunk of nuno-felt yardage that I had done for Convergence in 16. This was, I believe, the second time I had done black and white nuno-felt, and I just loved it. You see that red haze? That was a chunk of silk from a silk sari. And I just wanted to do a little touch of red that I might not necessarily put in a strictly black and white coat, but I love the idea of having that accent if it worked. Well, that piece of silk bled. So in addition to the silk patch, there was this halo of red that just happened anyway. Pretty gorgeous. So it became this coat. And because it had that red bleed over halo, I used a dark red piping for this coat and put a red lining in it. And the smiling woman on the right is the recently retired professor from Arkansas who saw the coat first in the fashion show at Midwest Weavers, absolutely fell in love, went home, and the following 2 years later, that conference in 19 in Grinnell, Iowa, she saw it in the teachers show and said, "Is that for sale?" And she bought it. And it makes me so happy to know where the special pieces are. That was a pretty tidy segue to 19, wasn't it? So this is one of the coats that I made for the little fashion show at Midwest Weavers in 19 in Grinnell. There's 3 different weavers work in this little coat, and it was great fun putting together another black and white piece. For that show, I also put in this jacket, a collaborative piece, my nuno-felt, which I gave to my friend Karen Swing, who added additional patches of some of the same silks and did boro stitching on top. She's pretty cool. So the boro stitching is primarily on the wool and silk of my nuno-felt. But as you can see at the bottom of the image on the left, she just had this idea and continued that stitching down onto the handwoven part as well. And it was very, very effective. All right. So this introduces, so that's regional weavers conferences or textile conferences. And then we have Convergence, which I have mentioned already. Convergence, our national runway show, National Weavers Textile Conference with a really cool runway fashion show full of stuff from the maker's hands. So these 4 coats, garments, are things I have done over the years that were not accepted into the Convergence fashion show. How it goes, it's a crapshoot. This one was. I don't remember what year. It may have been 04 when Convergence was here in Denver, the Denver area. This coat is was pretty much one of a kind, and I have done some more. I did the felt patch on the back and also the matching one on the front of the coat. So as I told my students all week, you look good coming and going. So I have a couple more like pairs of felted patches that one of these days I'm going to get around to making into coats, centerpieces of coats like these. This is a very fun process. This is another one that I believe was in one of the early Convergence fashion shows that I did, or in which I participated. The panels, what I call fractured landscape, were done by Murray Johnston, a landscape quilter from Birmingham, Alabama, no longer with us, but she did these 3 panels with the landscape that just completely wrapped around the body. And I made it into this coat just using my black handwoven fabric because it didn't need anything else with these panels. So this coat was in probably 3 fashion shows and 4 exhibitions. I don't know. I finally sold it to a very happy retired clerk of court from New York. This show was in the fashion show in Reno at Convergence. I was trying, someone had finally said to me, when you're making something to be on the runway, think in terms of distance, think in terms of dramatic impact. Those models are out there swishing and swirling to their heart's content, trying to show off your garment. Think in terms of large gestures when you're making something for a runway. So in this instance, this is a swing coat. It's got quite a bit of movement. And the color strokes are fairly broad. These are all my handwoven fabrics, scraps for the most part. That deep cobalt blue with just a touch of black at the collar, which was a convertible collar. And then with a sweep of turquoise, starting low, sweeping around the back of the body and ending high. This is the other outfit I sent to Reno. Remember? I bet you do. So more chain and the chainmail. So by the time Convergence in Reno rolled around, David was developing hand problems. So I decided that I would do this jacket by myself primarily. So I added this kind of Western style formal jacket to the black dress with the chainmail inset. So I made chain fringe. David actually made the 2 buttons for me, the shiny copper things for a closure, and stamped on the top of them were the Chinese ideograms for luck and prosper. detail of the jacket. Eventually the chain fringe went all the way across the back. And the reason for the chain was, you see how shiny that handwoven fabric is? That dark red weft was actually a knitting yarn I've been hoarding that was half rayon and half copper. These are the two coats I made for Convergence 22, whenever that was, in February. My handmade nuno-felt that I made in early February and then turned into these coats in mid-February and just managed to get them in by the deadline. And yes, they were both accepted. So please, y'all come, Convergence 22 in Knoxville, Tennessee. It's about 100 miles from where I am. My booth buddy Neil and I will be there being vendors. We'd love to see you. Describe the coats. Okay. The Peanut Gallery has said something. So these two coats, the one on the left, the green one, is primarily my handwoven fabric in a kind of soft forest green and black twill, and that's it. The nuno-felt has silks that were actually mostly produced by me. There are a couple of silks that were prints, black and white prints that I overdyed. There are a couple of pieces of silk that I did some Saracen removal, which I'm not going to go into right here, but it's a process I enjoy immensely. A shibori type process. And the piece in the middle that has just a little bit of the magenta touch, I don't remember if that was intentional or not, but it certainly sparked the decision to put magenta piping on this coat. The piece on the right is the first time I did the entire front and back and side panels with my felt. The sleeves are hand woven. There is a hood on this coat. It's the first time I did a hood on this style, and I like it quite a bit. The theme for this year's Convergence Fashion Show is something over the Smokies. Might be Seasons of the Smokies. So the coat on the left is titled something having to do with deep forest summer pools, something. But the coat on the right is about a winter moon on snowy mountains. And it was great fun. Again, that silk shows a number of odd dark on dark shibori patterning, and that is the aforementioned Saracen removal by I never have gotten a good title for that. It's a technique I learned. I use it a fair amount. They're pretty beautiful. Yeah. I look forward to Convergence in July. Thanks, everybody. Now get busy and think about what you'd like to see on a runway that you've made. Thanks, everybody.